Hi, and very welcome to this roundtable called Smart Cities and Universal Design. I'm Stefan Junestrand, and we'll moderate this exciting roundtable with the four excellent speakers: Virginia Real Gaya, CEO at Adequal; Jonathan Chacon, Senior Accessibility Software Engineer at Cabify; Claude Devred, Development Officer at Picto Access; and Alex Domano, Head of Design at Avanti Studio. The reason to discuss smart cities from a universal design perspective is that smart cities are most often developed through a technologically driven process and not enough taking into account a holistic and inclusive user experience. This results many times in smart cities that lack both cognitive and physical accessibility and usability for a big part of the population. What we will do in this roundtable is to initially highlight 4 different aspects and services around smart cities from a universal design approach through the same number of speakers. And then in a common final discussion, we will dig a little deeper into how to apply universal design for smart cities with the aim to highlight the universal design concept within the development of smart cities. The first speaker is Virginia Real Gaya, CEO at Adequal, that will present how to be an accessibility city.
Hola, gracias Stefan, y gracias.
Thanks, Stefan, and thanks for the organization to give me the opportunity to participate in this 4th International Congress on Technology for Entertainment and Culture. My name is Virginia Real. I'm from the company called Adequal, and I work on the Access City project. We disseminate and provide diagnosis and improve urban situations through our technological tool. Our technological tool has 2 parts. One part is an app, and the other is an integrated GNS. One thing that we have to always keep in mind the environment to provide comfort and movement within this city, and to make it as comfortable as possible for visitors. But accessibility through local administrations is not an easy task. We've detected that they don't have accessibility plans. Most of these are static types of documents, and there's a lack of interaction of data, and it's difficult to take decisions. So this means that many of the actions in municipalities are very isolated types of actions. Now, what do we offer or try to offer to local administrations? We offer data collection systems through our application, so that these data can be integrated into a map, and so that they're interactive to improve decision taking, and also bearing in mind, taking into account the accessibility. Now, how does our service work? We have 2 types of profiles. One is a technical profile. That's an important part of our company. We divide the city up by street sections, identifying incidents that are cataloged in groups and subgroups, and these incidents then under the regulations of the autonomous community and under the umbrella of the new PMA order, we categorize then all of these accessibility incidents in groups and subgroups, and then our technical team needs to validate these incidents in terms of the interaction with users. We also included citizens in this accessibility plan. And we map. Here we have a map of the different streets, the different itineraries, and so forth. Now, this application then can be downloaded by citizens under their user profile. Now, that user profile offers users the opportunity to interact with the application by adding incidents, accessibility incidents, or eliminating ones that have been solved, or planning routes before leaving home, depending on their personal needs. But all of this interaction with the user and visitors through the application is always post-validation after our technical team. Our technical team goes, validates the incident, and then catalogs that into our groups and subgroups of incidents so that we have the technical information that we need to solve the problem. Now, when all of this information is included in the application and in the map, we extract the information and we make it business intelligence so that we can be analyzed and we can get indicators from that. These indicators oftentimes are personalized so that the city councils can in a very easy manner, they can take their decisions. These are indicators that range from incidents in road sections, roads, and many other indicators that could arise. This creates big data in urban accessibility. There's not much information on this. And our maps can be shared with the GIS maps. Now, in terms of our methodology, well, first of all, we do work to know what the priorities are and at the local administrative level. And then over the short and long term, in terms of maintenance, we collect all of the data depending on the priority areas or the most imminent incidents that need to be addressed. We do an analysis of the information and then we communicate this information in a very simple fashion so that the town halls then have that information and it's placed on the map. Now, for the downloads by users, we have methods so that they can download the information and the city councils can do marketing and citizens know that this service exists. And after that, this service is for 1 year renewable, and we validate the incidents during that period with the interactions with the user interactions with the application. And we also know how many downloads were done by citizens. We have all that information. It's important to know that data has to be maintained, updated. So it's important to always renew data and obtain the most updated information possible So we have dynamic accessibility plans, and this really facilitates the taking of accessibility decisions by the town halls. Thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Virginia, for this super interesting presentation. We'll come back with some questions later. The next speaker is Jonathan Chacon, Senior Accessibility Software Engineer at Cabify, that will speak about ciudades más sostenibles gracias a la multimovilidad. Jonathan, the floor is yours.
Gracias, Stefan. Gracias a Fundación 11 por
Thank you, Stefan. And thanks for this opportunity to talk about inclusion, accessibility, and mobility. My name is Jonathan Chacon. Officially, I'm an accessibility engineer. We're using software at Cabify, but not accessibility affects many different aspects of a company, of people's lives. And in Cabify, we saw that accessible software was not enough for people's needs. Cabify is a technology company devoted especially to transport within cities. And there we have the concept of multi-mobility, which means that a person can go from one point to another using different means of transport, mobility in general. Not only do people move, but objects as well. And information moves as well. And this is all related to multi-mobility. There are a lot of benefits to this, like the possibility that a person can select different options to move from point A to point B. And some of these options are more or less accessible, depending on the person's needs. Also, the opportunity for work is enlarged because there are more labor profiles, and movement becomes more intelligent because there's a movement of information, and this can be very useful for people. But not everything is so beautiful in multi-mobility. There are also problems that arise from this, because this access to mobility resources also has an impact, an economic impact, pollution, traffic. There are also problems that the accessible resources are not available for the people who need those resources because they're being used by people who may not need those resources. So we have to address all of these problems to strike a balance so that the benefits of multi-mobility benefit all people. And in Cabify, we're researching using artificial intelligence to use all of these possibilities offered by artificial intelligence to strike a balance between benefits and the negative impact to reach greatest benefits for the greatest number of people. Now, the main problem that we found at the beginning was making artificial intelligence understand what we really needed. So we had to transform information into something that artificial intelligence could understand. So we mapped cities, we divided them in understandable sections for them. We provided information so that artificial intelligence can understand it. This is similar to what happens when a person understands of what is happening or what they can do or what can be done. It's a different language, but the objectives are very similar. Now, when artificial intelligence knows what a city is and what multi-mobility is and what happens within that city, we have to explain certain details about the people that need to use multi-mobility. People are diverse. Not everyone can use a scooter or a bicycle or car sharing or a car with a driver. Everyone has their profile and their timetable needs and so forth are all different. So transferring all of this information to artificial intelligence is a complicated task. Now, at Cabify, we have 124,000 users that use accessible resources through our application. That's been identified. For example, one of our accessibility services is that a person would go in a car and pick up a person with a disability. A blind person, for example, maybe can't see the vehicle, or an elderly person might be not very mobile. So those 44,000 users, in addition to using other characteristics, but there are people with no disabilities, really, use these services as well, because the user experience is more comfortable and more pleasant for them. So there are many users that use the voice notification service, so they can hear that the car is on its way, that maybe it's stuck in a traffic jam or whatever. And this is for people with different disabilities. It can be very, very helpful. So we have artificial intelligence that understands diversity and people's different problems, but we have to really break with a recent trend that people had to learn to use technology and adapt to those different use models, those different devices and applications. The people were using these mechanically without really understanding them. We have to make a more responsible technology, more inclusive technology, and that's what we're working on through artificial intelligence, so that technology adapts to people and their capacities and needs. And the immediate or middle term future is to improve artificial intelligence, mobility in the cities, so that the lives of people improve. And technology, we need to always be pushing the limits of mobility.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, for this super interesting presentation. And multi-mobility is really a key question for universal design and universal accessibility and this within the cities. We will come back to that. Our following speaker is Chloe Derred, which is Development Officer at Picto Access, and she will talk about being a smart territory by joining human and smart cities. Whenever you want.
Thank you. Thank you to the ONCE Foundation for letting me talking about my subject here today. So I'm going to talk to you today on the project we had at Picto Access with the Arras municipality. Arras is a town in the north of France. Here you can see in blue the Pas-de-Calais county, and Arras is the second most populated town in this county. It is the third most populated town in the region, so it's really important, and it's also a very attractive town in terms of tourism, because it has a very specific architecture and is known for memory tourism. Just to let you have a little context. Arras had built a digital strategy based on 6 axes, which you can see right here. And they asked Picto Access to help them in one of the parts of their project about being a smart city, but not only a smart city. They wanted to become a human smart city. Just as Stefan said earlier, today smart city is often viewed as the addition of technologies, and we often forget that we make all this for humans. So we have to understand the needs of the people. And here is the definition of the human smart city by the Strategy and Digital Transformation Director at Arras Municipality. But who is Picto Access? Picto Access is a social-based company based in the north of France. Our aim is to build a better world, accessible anywhere and to anyone. And what we did, we developed a digital solution to give information about accessibility. We know that accessibility is important, but knowing about the accessibility is also very important. we developed a digital tool, which you can see the frieze of 8 pictograms. Each pictograms represent a difficulty for people. And it's based on a color code, which gives the accessibility level of the place. And the idea is not to have an app, a specific app or website for this. The frieze of pictograms is plugged directly on the existing communication channels of the place, because when I go to a museum, I'm going to the museum's website to understand, to know about the accessibility. That's it. That's the main idea of Pick2Access. How did we work with ARAS, and in general, how we work with our clients? First, we collect data. Our team goes to the places that the client decided to work on to collect data and define the accessibility of the place. Then we give value to this data by synthesizing it through the 8 pictograms frieze. And this frieze is then plugged on the website. Last but not least, it's the follow-up. It's really good to have accessibility information, but it generally improves with the time, because the places will make works, improve it. So it's important to follow up. Our follow-up tool enables the place or a manager to update the information, but also get the user's feeling. When you go to a place, you can then give your feedback, your feeling about the place. And it's really important to have the place to improve itself. And for ARAS municipality, it was also very important for them to be able, thanks to this feedback and to the following up to, in general, to assess the accessibility policy they had and to adapt it to the needs of their users, the citizens and the visitors. What we could say is that, in fact, human smart city is lots of things. It's an addition of things, like first, a known and qualified user accessibility, here with Pick2Access, a strong political commitment. Without this, nothing can happen. It has to come from the municipality, the dynamic oriented mind, public organization. If they are not dynamic, it will take a long time and it won't change, it won't improve the quality of life on the territory. The human and digital scalable tools. So it's important, of course, today in smart cities, we need digital tools, but they have to be linked with human needs. That's really important. And also very important is the user's feedback analysis to make sure that what the municipality implements is in link with the needs of the people living there. In fact, it's a virtuous circle. You have the territory who, in fact, has to make the territory a nice place to be for the users. And for this, they work with Pick2Access. Pick2Access give the accessibility information to the users. Users give their feedback, and the feedback goes to the territory. And also the needs are given to the territory. So it's a circle. And Pick2Access is not here between the territory and users, because they also talk between themselves. To conclude, in fact, this project was on 90 places in ARAS. So there are 90 places where you can find accessibility information. The municipality chose these places. And yeah, that's, in fact, and we can say that Pick2Access is here the adaptation, the implementation of the municipality reflection. It's really important. We are here to help the municipality in their objective. Their objective is to make their territory a nice place to be and a human smart city. So that's what we did with them. And we're here on the ARAS scale, but it can be developed anywhere. We also work in other places. And just to have a few figures, with ARAS, the project was to develop to implement the tool on 90 places on the municipality. So we have 90 places with accessibility information. It's in fact, in this situation, we can think that Pick2Access is the implementation, the adaptation, in fact, in real life of the reflection of the municipality. It's really important that, in fact, we are the declination of it. It's on ARAS project, but it's also what we can do on several places, many places, in fact, where they want to give more information about accessibility and make that territory more accessible and a nice place to live for their citizens and visitors. For a few figures, we know that each year $13.6 billion are spent by Americans with reduced mobility for holidays. Arras is a very touristic city, so it's totally logic that they work on accessibility because it's an important point to develop. We also know that in Europe, there are 36 million people with the financial and physical capacity to go in holiday, but only 5 million goes in holiday because the others don't know where to go and they are too afraid about inaccessibility. So that's what I wanted to share with you, is that accessibility is very important, but communication is also very important. That's a way to make a link between the reflection, the policy of the municipality, and link it to the user's needs. Thank you for your attention. I can hear you, Stefan.
Thank you so much, Chloe, for this presentation. Our last speaker is Alex Domano, Head of Design at Avanti Studio, Design for Citizens. Alex.
Hola, gracias, Stefan. Soy, como dice
Stefan.
Soy socio fundador y director creativo de
I'm the creative director of Avanti Studio.
Es un estudio centrado en
This is a studio focused on the design for cities, a strategic agency focused on urban narratives from the perspective of design for all. The design for city looks at the different design disciplines, and gives urban planning a certain logic to make them more user-friendly. Micro-mobility, planning of streets, inclusion, tourism, all of this has made cities very complex and very changing places where a diverse group of people live. Now, each person perceives their environment in different ways, and these changes and this flow of changes really in the city could make it a very confusing and stressing place for many people. Wayfinding is a design discipline focused on cities and surrounding areas is to generate signaling and orientation devices to improve navigation through the city and facilitate the most accessible routes for each situation and for each person. Now, not only for orientation, but also there's a signaling system, a wayfinding system in a city has major benefits because it incentivizes physical activity, and this has a major impact on our cities because it improves the health of citizens, and we're reducing CO2 in the environment, and we can discover neighborhoods, maybe unknown neighborhoods, and if they're well identified, well signaled, then we can discover those, and this has a direct impact on local businesses and also in terms of security and the inclusion of these neighborhoods, which sometimes are lesser known in urban environments. I wanted to talk about Madrid. That's the project we're working on now, an orientation system in Madrid, a universal pedestrian system. Now, Madrid is a city, very large city, more than 2 million inhabitants, and the city attracts a lot of benefits from tourism. Now, what a project of these characteristics found that 32%, about 1/3 of visitors got lost at least once during their visit, where they got. But that didn't concern us so much about. But what happened is that residents, at least once a week, also became lost. And this has a very direct impact on the different facets of one's life and issues related to learning, working, moving through the city, and has an impact on our lives when we're not in legible areas or non-friendly areas. So we needed to identify the facets of this diversity that give life to a city. And we found that cities today, if we want them to be visitable, it must be a city open to diversity. It must be friendly and inclusive of gender, physical capacities of the citizens, and many other facets of diversity. So the principles of wayfinding are very clear. They should be a universal design. There should be no gaps so that we don't break the accessibility chain for everyone, but they need to be inclusive with all different languages, cultures, and codes. It should reveal the city, should be predictable, consistent, and it should be intuitive as well. So one of the key points is identifying that complexity of diversity from the very beginning of the design process all the way to the end. And participation with a great diversity of users to be able to measure the impact of the program that we're developing to compensate the needs and capacities of different people and different capacities, different disabilities, and the number of resources then that the wayfinding requires. Now, aspects of diversity are very diverse. They affect the way we move within a city, language, speed, the profile of the user, functional capacity, and so forth. Also, we're not always the same people, nor do we all always move in the same area. So every time that we do move through the city, we're a whole group of conditions that can really have an impact on our orientation. That is why the identification of the user is very important. Now, based on that definition of diversity, we identify the groups in the city and to invite them to collaborate with us to participate in our specific project about exploring different neighborhoods to see the legibility, so to speak, of the different neighborhoods. We draw up the first ideas with different elements that need to be put in place for very different groups of users. Sometimes we invite children also to evaluate.
Desde esa perspectiva, cómo entienden la ciudad y los recursos que estamos
To see how they understand the city and the different resources available to them, to see if the design that we're coming up with, that we're developing, is understood by people who are first learning to get around a city. Now, all of this helps us in the design process to make sometimes large and sometimes small adjustments, and to come up with a system that can help people to navigate their way through the city or visit a city and make neighborhoods more transparent. So that's been our experience in the work that we're doing in cities. Thanks.
We just heard 4 very interesting hands-on projects. I think they can inspire us for the work to design more inclusive cities. We got some time left, and I got some questions to the speakers. First of all, Virginia, which is the main takeaway from the pilot projects that can help you to improve your services as a company?
Hemos detectado en las pruebas que hemos
detected in the tests that we've carried out, we've really identified 4 aspects. One is that we have the whole chain of accessibility. Improvements cannot be done in an isolated fashion. If we do actions bearing in mind a certain type of accessibility, but we forget others, for example, working on a curb, but we find that there's no signing for that area. Sometimes we prioritize design and comfort and security, and not the urban spaces themselves. The cognitive needs sometimes is also forgotten, and sustainability. Environmental and sustainability doesn't keep diversity in mind all the time either. In our projects, we have the lack of knowledge by citizens of what accessibility really is. So we do think we want to educate people and break with that tendency.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. Let's come back to you, Jonathan. You spoke about artificial intelligence, but which is actually the role of artificial intelligence when it comes to supporting the accessibility from a cognitive perspective? Could you explain that to us?
Bien, la discapacidad cognitiva es la más desconocida de las discapacidades.
Cognitive disability is the least known of disabilities, and when we're modeling a space or an algorithm or a problem for artificial intelligence, unfortunately, we're still modeling using users with average capacities. We started to model users with special users with special needs, and with cognitive disability, we understand that the problem was not only in one direction of communication of this service or the application to the person, but also from the person towards the service. And so what we're researching now with artificial intelligence is to adapt to the different ways that a person has, knowing their habits, knowing their needs, and that the person then becomes familiar in their environment about the mobility opportunities or entertainment opportunities. So artificial intelligence is crucial for that, because it has to learn from each individual person to adapt the interface, the different media, so that the person can feel good in understanding what is happening and what they can do, and understand what they want to do. So there's 2 premises with artificial intelligence adapted to the interface of each person: simplifying with the premise of the fewer options, fewer complications, and the other premise is always striking a balance between the freedom of the person and their privacy with this adaptation and simplification for accessibility. So if the person, for example, a blind person, does not find bicycle services, if there's no accessible bicycles for them, but their path should not be blocked if they want to ask for a bicycle for a family member or a friend. So we do need to simplify things and not limit those possibilities. And this is all thanks to artificial intelligence. It can really adapt to each person individually.
This two-way communication perspective applied to artificial intelligence, really an eye-opener. We keep that in mind, definitely. Chloe, question to you. Regarding your presentation, how do you think your work can help to improve the future of city planning, this kind of processes? In what way?
So, in fact, Picture Access with the following tool enables the cities to understand what lacks in general in the accessibility. So most of the time when you think about accessibility, most of people think only about wheelchairs, and we know that it's not only about this. We don't only talk about a disability, we also talk of seniors, of family with pushchairs, of pregnant women or broken legs, and everyone. So it enables to understand everyone's needs, and our frames of reference are based on the use, not on the norms, which change from a country to another sometimes. While the use, a blind person will need the exactly same thing from a country to another. So that's interesting, and it enables to understand. It's interesting is that often people working on the disability side of a municipality, they're not always aware of what people with disabilities or specific needs need in general. So it enables to understand. Sometimes they say, oh, we didn't think that this could be a problem for accessibility. So we couldn't change it because we had no idea about this problem. So they are able to adapt themselves. So that's the way I think we can help building the city of the future and the more inclusive city of the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It really implies also all the stakeholders, not only the designers, but all actors involved in improving and designing cities. Yeah. Then we come closely to what Alex actually talked about. Then from your perspective, which is your main recommendation regarding the universal design for smart cities from an urban user perspective, if you could pick out one or just a couple of things, what would those be?
Bien, yo recomendaría tres.
I would recommend three specific things. First, since the very beginning of the project, the customer, the architecture, all the team members for the urban development project, they need to understand that users need to be involved in the whole design process, not just at the end to evaluate, or not just at the beginning for consultation, but they have to be integrated in an ongoing fashion to monitor the entire process. Secondly, and warn the clients of the risks and benefits of doing this or not doing that. It's very important that they understand these cases if users are not involved in the process. And to complement the vision, so urban planners need to understand that they need multidisciplinary teams to give this focus, this multifaceted focus on urban planning. There's certain reluctance there. So psychologists, environmental psychologists, for example, could understand this concept better of cognitive accessibility and how to integrate that into the design process. The media, wayfinding, sometimes doesn't get into urban planning. And the last point, I think it's important to understand that cities need customized plans. Sometimes plans have a lot of technology, but if they're planned in another part of the world, they might not correspond to the specific characteristics and culture of a particular city. And maybe what Shanghai needs is completely different from what the city of Toledo in Spain needs. What resources are required also. So cities need to speak up.
Alex, to sum up, I would like to share with you what I personally think are 4 really interesting takeaways, one from each speaker. I think from the first one, we can say that we need to develop clear strategies from a municipality level to make our cities accessible from a holistic perspective. And we need to apply artificial intelligence to make the multi-mobility efficient, universal, and adaptable for all users. And this should be designed for a two-way communication. Third, that it is important to understand the current accessibility of a city, but also very important to develop tools to improve the accessibility and link it to the real user needs. And to connect with the wayfinding, I think that this wayfinding that you have explained, Alex, is a design strategy that uses signage and not only improves the accessibility, but also the health of its citizens, the culture, the economy, and the environment, etc. Thank you so much to the 4 speakers for sharing your knowledge and your experience. Really exciting. We could speak for a long time, but the time is out. Thanks to the audience for the attention and the interest. And finally, thanks to Fundación Once for dedicating a roundtable to this important subject, universal design for smart cities. Thank you all.